My name is Saul Ostrow. I started as an artist, became a curator and a critic because what other people were doing was more interesting to me than what I was doing in the studio. So when I made the transition out of the studio and into these other art worlds, or these other aspects of the art world, I took that attitude with me. The question was always, what if? What if one starts an organization, which we did, called CPI, Critical Practices Incorporated, and a not-for-profit, and tried to build it on a different model. So CPI is about 16 people from various backgrounds working on various projects, all contributing to the same entity, in which we organize things like conversations for 30 people on a given subject. We organize, one of the questions we asked was, what if an artist has to deal with their work in a domestic setting? So for years, we've invited artists to come and do projects at my loft in which they couldn't move the furniture. They had to work around the limitations of my lifestyle because that was a what if question. And what was interesting in terms of those things was the artists ended up finding themselves in totally different conversations than they would if they had a gallery exhibition or had somebody to their studio. In terms of publication, we raised the question of the sort of what if question. What if you have a publication, print it in an edition of 1,000, and distribute it by leaving piles of 100 at different locations around the country, and didn't track it? You didn't ask people to you didn't ask people to tell you where they got it or get back to you or anything. Literally, it was like a postcard sent without an address. And these are all things that the CPI did do, or continues to do, with the idea that these are the ways that critical discourse is maintained. A lot of people have absolutely no idea what it means to be interdisciplinary. They confuse intradisciplinary with interdisciplinary. People tend to think interdisciplinary does away with the notion of the disciplinary, things like that. So there's a lot of confusion about this. And it becomes apparent when you start actually trying to work together, right? Because somebody wants to collaborate with a sociologist, but has a idea about sociology, but doesn't know the language of sociology. And the sociologist basically can only repeat their language. Or the sociologist ends up thinking what the person really wants to do is learn about an aspect of sociology. So you don't really get an exchange, you don't really begin to construct a platform that is shared territory, but just two people coming at it, at a problem from their point of view. Seemingly the biggest problem is people aren't trained for collaboration, and people, though everybody yells interdisciplinary, in the the problem remains that people's notion of the interdisciplinary and the collaborative is a type of hybridity. It's not synthesis. It's not, okay, you bring this information, I'll bring this information, we combine it, and let's see what we have. It's like, that's my information, there's your information, this is how it will interact, and I'll be sure of my authorship, you'll be sure of your authorship, seemingly we don't want to lose our identity in this, or because the individual is still rewarded, right? And we haven't yet got to that point where there's a real understanding, or in this society, of what it means to collaborate, what it literally means to momentarily lose that notion of singular authorship, right? We get a bit more of it in the sciences because, you know, you've got 90 scientists working all on the same equation, and they have to exchange information to try to move the equation. But most places else in our culture, that doesn't really hold true. There isn't that type of exchange. There isn't that notion of common platform. So that's where I would see the biggest problem is the notion is when somebody can say the problem is mine, where the problem's not mine, the problem's ours, and the solution is ours, right? And I contributed to that solution, not that this is my solution. The next real stage, and in the society increasingly demands it, is that we begin to actually think collaboratively, not just work collaboratively.